Aabria Iyengar,
Hey,
masterpiece.
thank you. I'm so excited we could finally talk about it. Gosh, going back and seeing the early interview where I was like, "Buh, buh." Oh, buddy, you just gotta trust, I think. Because like, how do you explain to someone at the end of this without spoiling stuff, like what
No,
it's going to
yeah.
be? Like, it was just like, yeah, it can't be. It really can't be D&D, or it can't be like it can't be bunnies and burrows or like wander home or like these gentler like systems because it's going to go so wide, honestly, so quickly, and then just keep turning. So yeah, I'm glad to be at the end of it because I was like, now I can talk. I can use all of my words about what the story is.
Well, it's really interesting you bring up the 5E system because Eric and I talked about that. That was when they gave me the answer where I gave up halfway through the interview.
Yeah.
Because I was like, none of my questions are as good as what you just said. But can you talk to me about what you're excited to explore with the 5E system, specifically with the horror element?
Yeah. So for me, the thing that D&D does better than most other systems is that power leveling. It's that creep of when you gain a level, you are significantly more powerful than you were before. And power in fifth edition translates directly to your ability to enforce your will on the environment and other people around you, usually via tremendous and fantastical acts of violence. So much of this season, especially with like the double leveling. Every time they leveled up, they got 2 levels. So it wasn't just, oh, I got a little bit better at this. It's like you got way better at a thing than you did before. And it always came at the end of like some like tremendous action, usually violent, interacting with the blue. Like you eat the bear's brain or you eat some part of the bear and you get it right away. But fighting something that is also attuned to the blue makes you even better at fighting. And there was also like a sort of stealth mechanic that I think a couple people noticed was everyone's initial builds. I instilled a maximum like they could only be half casters if they were going to cast it all. So it's half casters and martial, and it wasn't until post their interaction with the corium at the heart in Phoebe's heart in Reactor Charlie that they had access to full caster classes. The only one that was off the table the whole time was Druid because introducing the idea of turning into other animals really
Yeah.
kind of breaks the world in a way that was like, oh, I don't want to try to account for that. Like exploitation of like other animals and things around you becomes less important when you can just be those things yourself.
Hmm.
So taking Druid off the board, yeah. Every time you gain levels, you become more powerful. That power is always like, even in the things that are like social, like there are spells that are charm person, like those like enchantment spells instill compulsion, like you're enacting your will on someone else against their better judgment or their priority set. So everything you are made to be better at in D&D is inherently cruel and violent. So if I keep doing that to you and giving you these nebulous situations of like, who's really bad here? Is the bear evil? Is it just the chipmunks? Are the first stoats evil? Well, now if it's very explicit because they're like threatening Sybil, but also like, what's the state of this world? Like of Last Bass, like you haven't experienced a lot of it, but everything I give you is a bigger and bigger hammer. At what point does everything in your way that's stopping you from what you want to do become a nail? And that was like a very big theme in the system. It's a very big theme in the story, and the system was always there to support it and to subtly push them towards it. And you can also catch, like, if you go back and watch, you can catch me sort of like trying to like put my thumb on the scale a little bit of like, oh, I thought you'd have more people that made it out of the Red Warren with you. So here's a point where you kind of failed and could have done a little bit more. What if you can do more? If I make you a little bit more desperate to enact more on the world, but the toolkit that you have, that when I give you a question of what do you do, the moment you look down at your character sheet, you see a bunch of ways in which to interact violently within the world. How does that affect your problem solving as you get bigger and more interesting like problems? So that was a big old part of it. And I think the table handled it beautifully. And I think the story was better for that sort of like core tension at the heart of it.
I completely agree. You have been so adamantly defending the first notes and all.
Oh, half of that was a joke. Like, look, the adventuring party episodes are me truly unhinged because, like, I tend to feel, especially when we're filming D20, I have like a big like, whew, we made it, and my brain just absolutely shorts out. So like the adventuring parties are usually either me being very specifically like, let's talk about the story. But if you let me get into my like wacky bag, I will pick a weird hill and die on it. Brennan truly is like my brother. And I'm like, okay, I'm an only child, so I don't know what it's like to harass your siblings. So this is what that felt like. And I was like, yes, I understand how I built the stoats and what they look like and what they did. But there's enough of a case that you can make in either direction based on like how you want to see the world and how you want to view systems, that you can make a pretty strong case in any direction. It's not about doing the thing that's exactly right. It's about making a choice and like standing by your choice. So that was just me sort of bugging the table because we were coming into the finale and I was like, what if I just say like, yeah, sometimes it's just a bit and you like find a hill and you're like, I'm going to die on this hill for no good reason.
I love it. I think what I was most curious about, had the first note survived, would they have worked with Phoebe or would they have tried to stop her?
Had the first note survived, they would have been very excited to see and meet Phoebe and figure out what she wanted. And the moment they realized Phoebe's aims were to make the entire plant go nuclear, and with the fallout, whoever survives. I think they would have said that like that's beyond the pale. And now we are aligned against Phoebe because that could kill too many things. I think there's that sense of like, even the first notes have their limits, and you didn't see that before they were killed. But like, yeah, that idea of like the first notes went down that easily because they were never the final boss. Like they were the people that were left that were trying to figure out what to do in and with this world, and knowing that humans are real and will come back, and not understanding whether or not Phoebe was a friend or a foe. Again, even playing into the theme of like every decision you have to make is really gray and not that concrete, even for the like NPCs within this world. They're going through the same thing you're going through. So having the first notes there as people that could have fallen on either side based on interactions and based on new evidence, like was a bit of a part of it. But I still think everything went the best possible way it could. But yeah, that's what would have happened.
Very interesting. Now we have to talk about Phoebe.
Yeah.
What happened to Dr. Wennebacher how is it grosser than the bear map?
Because it deals with that last horrible problem of like, the bear map is this sort of like infestation and exploitation and parasitism, but the bear is still its own thing. It's a thing that's infected like a disease. The horror of Phoebe is that Phoebe like fused with Dr. Wennebacher. Dr. Wennebacher isn't there anymore. That's Phoebe like wearing him like a suit. The final comp, because we've made so many jokes about like what the comps and the hidden comps for this show and this story are, the final comp was Attack on Titan. And it always started with that, like the first thing from Attack on Titan is, this is a world where there's an unknowable, unfightable like monster that is knocking at the gates. They exist and they will come back, and we don't really know what to do, but we're going to try to figure out how to survive in the face of whatever they are. And that felt like such a fun early analogy. And people called it out really early that were like, oh, this feels like Attack on Titan. Like this, even down to like the scale and the size and like the shape of the thing. And I was like, yeah, but lean in even farther. Cause like, whatever, spoilers for Attack on Titan. The idea that like the Titans are like piloted by people is like, ooh, that somehow makes everything so much worse because there is human intentionality behind this like eldritch monster. So that was the thing I wanted to lean into for Phoebe, which is like Phoebe isn't unknowable in the way that we thought humans were unknowable until we finally met them. We know what stoats are like. So having a stoat sort of in control of the eldritch endgame of this is like, ooh, it's extra yucky. Also just looked really gross and bad. So I love that for her.
I love that you're like, Matt did Eldritch Horror. I will one up that. Thank you very much.
Look, again, that was also the funniest part of like all of this was in place. And then we got to Malaya's Mirror and I was like, oh my gosh, like while I've got you, let's talk about this. And then like we play Kingdom Death together. So we are also like playing inside this like game that has so much like eldritch monstrosity at the core of it. So like it's been a thing that like I've been thinking about for a while. So it was fun to like take a little swing at it. I think it went pretty good.
Without a doubt. I think one thing that's so interesting to me is Phoebe spent essentially 20 years among humans versus all the other stoats. Why did that experience make her even more like anti-human than they already were? Because they did like lock him in the closet when they first met him, but this is worse.
I think there's always that like subtle implication that like, cool, once you are there and you're safe and hidden and you go, it's the reverse Avatar of it all. Like not the Last Airbender, the like blue alien thing of like, you can drop into an avatar and see the society as a member of that society and come to your own conclusions. And like the beauty and like hope and triumph of Avatar is that you see it and it becomes something worth like staying with and defending and protecting. And I think the fun of a horror game is going like, I have seen through the lens of safety, pretending to be Dr. Wennerbacher, what the humans do and what they are like. And I have found it wanting. I do not like it. I reject it with my whole heart. And I will come back and still remember my roots and who I am. And my goal is to eradicate this menace and clear the field for that original priority of like making more stoats that are just like you. Like Phoebe was so on mission. And I think that sort of clarity and focus of purpose across 20 years is terrifying in its own right. When you're like, oh, your mind didn't get changed at all.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
I love it. And then one of the things that was so cool about this season is you not only had these just like amazing battle maps, but you had the puppet show, you had the tapes, you had the like clipboards. Can you talk about creating an immersive experience in the physical world as well as like through the storytelling?
I mean, there's something very cool when you have the crew that Dimension 20 has, where you're like, oh, everyone here is an absolute killer. Like they're the best in the game at what they do. Do not underutilize the resources available to you. Tell as much story as you can. The walls of the dome are like better projectors than they've ever been. You can do more with that. Like, how do you push? Like, what do you do past a projection? Like, what if you start telling story on the wall, not just using the dome as immersion, but the dome as storytelling and voice recording as storytelling. Carlos is the head of series, but he's also a phenomenal actor. So like, if he's got the time and he's interested, like, can you get a little bit of extra juice from him too? It's all about like using everything you have in front of you to try to tell as much story as you can, even down to the like little details of between an episode, we're going to slap a sticker on the back and they won't have noticed it. And all of that, like, there's also something sort of taking a step back and not answering that question all the way. Caitlin, I've never finished a sentence. I won't start now. There's something about like unique about horror, which is like the 3 levels of horror. Like, how do I scare the characters at the table? How do I scare safely and kindly the players that are playing by like hitting some of their fears and making them feel that too? So they push it more into the characters and their characters' choices. And then the third and like biggest layer is like, how do you scare the audience there? So there's a lot of stuff that's done for immersion, because feeling inside it really allows like the players to feel the things that they are asking their characters to feel. And then of course, all the story is there to like to scare the characters. And then it's like the synergy and the synthesis of all that to like also get the audience. And I think that was where the like tapes really shown that it was something that bypassed, and it was like, you are hearing this too, and you are trying to discover and figure out what's going on. It's the nebulousness of all of it that really was able to like land all 3 of those axes. And yeah, like a difficult effort, but made much easier when you have like Rick and his squad and Carlos and Shabak and Kevin. Like I can't name everyone. Like everyone did such a good job that it made it so much easier for the sort of Herculean effort of trying to like get as much story into 10 episodes of a game with fear and confusion at its heart as you can.
That's so cool. And I don't think it would be an Aabria Caitlin interview if you didn't completely verge off my question.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Someday I'll remember it, but I won't.
I love it. It's one of my favorite. You immediately warned me, and then you're like, this isn't an answer. I'm just going to say this, though.
Yeah. Sorry, but, and then tangent.
I love it. Speaking of horror, can you talk to me a little bit about what your experience in like Burrow's End you wanted to bring to Candela Obscura?
Yeah, I think there was, oh gosh, it's so nice that even though they're like airing with a little bit of overlap, there were like months between the two to like digest everything that came from Burrow's End and decide like with the new set of parameters that Candela has, like it's a different ask. It's 3 episodes. They will air a month apart. And it's a different system and a different world and a lot of other things that are like, hey, this whole system's out of your hands. The world, like the lore exists. And this will be the first system or the first iteration of Candela where the audience has the lore book and can follow along with you. So make sure you don't get the lore wrong because they'll know immediately, which is very, very fun and exciting. It was definitely a lot of lessons about the like getting to the heart of what a fear is and exploring that in as many ways as possible. Burrow's End had a lot of layers of like fear and what it means to be human and violence and confusion and like the sort of like us versus them mentality and like sort of a conversation around like regimes and governments and responsibility and like trying to be able to see from a vantage point when a government breaks bad and when you have to do something and when you interact and when you fall in line. Like Burrow's End tried to cover a lot of things. And I was like, cool, for Candela, for it to be as clean and easy to pick up episode by episode, assignment by assignment, because they are self-contained in a way that Burrow's End wasn't. Like really drilled down onto a singular fear. And the big one for Candela is that like, that idea of monstrosity of like, your job is to find and deal with monstrous things. But what if you are the worst thing you ever met?
Yeah.
What do you become? What do you do? So yeah, I think there are a lot of really good lessons learned from Burrow's End and we're able to be taken into Candela and go like laser focus, get this one thing. And if you can nail that and everyone, like the audience understands that right away, you will be able to keep them on board from month to month and from like assignment to assignment.
Well, you kill it with Candela.
Thank you.
One of the things I'm curious about, because having all of them have this like touched by the magic of the Fairlands, it really kind of reminded me of that big reveal with Tula, where in a Revenant. Was that kind of part of the inspiration for offering that to all of them?
100%. Seeing what Brennan was able to do when he took my silly little devil's bargain in our session 0, or not even our session 0, our character gen, like watching him take that and take that little bit of like, what if I offer you something a little terrible and it becomes your little secret to keep and it becomes this little thing that informs so much of your choices that no one will know about until the reveal happens, and how fun it was to play that and how fun it was to watch it. It was definitely a thing that was like, new group, hey, what if? And then, in exchange for a scar, they got a little bit more of an ability. So like everyone in Candela starts off with 1 scar. So they're all that much closer to oblivion across the 3-arc campaign, like chapter. But yeah, I think the like seeing the success of how Tula felt was definitely a big mark in the like, I think I can continue to offer this and see what new things I will get back from people from it. And yeah, episode 1, having all those big reveals up top. There was also a lot of like, you can't hold on to the secret till episode 8. Like if they don't like, there's a thing about secrets. And this was something I talked about a little bit in Akathaf too, of like, the point isn't the secret. The point is who do you become and how does everyone react once the secret's known? So having to like keep that secret for so long was a fun subversion to my normal like paradigm of like get the secret out early and often, which we came back to for Candela, where it's like everyone's got to know what the board state is of this group, like why this group. You're all a little monstrous and we should know why. So now the subsequent 2 episodes will be about the like, oh my God, what are they? What are they capable of? What are they fighting for? And what are they fighting both within themselves and within inside the world of the Fairlands?
I love that. And then you've explored in Dimension 20 a lot of these like fantasy subgenres, and I'm loving it. Do you have any others that you really are excited to explore in the future?
Okay, this is gonna be my one very bad answer for you. Yes, but I'm gonna keep it a secret.
Not needed. Yeah, we'll see you again. I'm good with that.
Look, I know the address to Dropout. They can't. Like, they're going to have to move if they don't want to work with me anymore, because I just show up and sit in the dome and they're like, fine, who do you want? And I'm like, call Brandon. Get him in here. I have a half of an idea.
You just pull the chair to the other side of the table. You're like, I'm here now.
Duct tape myself to the dome and be like, I go here. This is great. But yeah, I think, again, like, I've made 1,000 jokes about not watching all of Lord of the Rings and not being very high fantasy driven as a kid. It feels very fun now as an adult to like get into that and immediately go to the edges of the genre. Cause I still think like the lion's share of like most fantasy, I'm like, it's fine. That's great. Like, I don't think I'm as resistant to it as I was when I was a kid, but like, I still find the like edges where it bleeds into like sci-fi or horror or these other things like a little more interesting. So there are lots of like subgenres and parts of fiction that intersect and interact and are in conversation with fantasy that I find fascinating, that I still want to like dig into and tell stories within. Some of them, like Burrow's End was a fun exploration of like, what if I do something that is not like pastiche or parody, but sort of sincerely inside of like a set of ideas that I want to explore, but also knowing that like I can come back and have the optionality to do something a little more sincere that will still be funny because the table is funny and games are funny, but also like getting a little bit back to the bag of like having like fun with the theme and the genre and playing with it and teasing it and like finding story within the comedy of that is very fun too. And I'm excited to get back to.
For as horrifying as this season one was to end with Jason becoming the Stoat Airbud.
Incredible. The implications of a little Stoat at the Olympics is the funny, like I definitely went home that night and I was like, what? Sure, of course, Lila's a scientist, but like Olympics, what does that mean? How does that work? And I just love it. It's just so fun. It's just so fun. Siobhan's so good at like seeing the heart of the thing and going like, here's the like fun corner inside it. And just in case you didn't see it, I'm going to shovel it and throw it into the air so we all get to play it into it too. And it was just so good. What an epilogue.
I love that so much. And then you've talked about how Burrow's End really digs into a lot of different themes. What was maybe your favorite one to explore that you haven't necessarily had the chance to explore in other D&D games?
Ooh, for me, I think it was definitely playing. Oh gosh, what a good question. I'm actually going to shut up and think about that for like 2 seconds. Yeah. I think there is something in the like, what does it mean to be human? That is so fun and a little off genre for D&D writ large because you're playing like an assortment of humanoids, but it all still comes down to that fundamental, like everyone here is people and we're exploring how we want to interact with the world and what we are capable of, both good and bad. We are capable of tremendous heroic like highs and also monstrous sort of like colonialist inspired lows, but it's still about like how we want to interact with the world. And I think there's something specific like that's a little more like that, but like the subset of that of like, what does it mean to be human? That was so fun by adding a layer of xenofiction on top of D&D that like, you can talk about all of the like moral highs of like the love of family and coming into one's own. Like we have, I'm so grateful that Izzy and Siobhan chose to play children because then you have that like coming of age tale that's also sitting inside of this. And like, what does it mean to become an adult? What does it mean to be human, to understand love and family and saving people and like reaching out and oh gosh, all of those things on top of the like, but you're still carnivores and you still exploit the world. And like, you are capable of lower lows maybe than you are your highest highs. And it's all about from moment to moment, from encounter to encounter, what are the choices that you make? Every encounter had options, like there were alternate win conditions that were like inherently nonviolent. And it's not a value judgment to say like which ones were taken at any given time. It is just as cool that Tula knew to like put the bear to peace with its heart as it is to have Rashawn with the most beautiful nat 20 blow up the last encounter with a perfectly like timed shot and like end this immediate and violent and monstrous threat. Like those are both correct. But yeah, playing in that like humanity to me is who you choose to be from moment to moment, the ability to choose to be past the state of nature that says do what you have to do to survive, but you can make a choice about how you want to be in the world and what you want to leave as a legacy and what you want to bring into it and what you want to like remove from it via all your interactions is like the coolest thing. And it was so nice to be able to tell a story about that.
I love that. And then obviously you had worked out like the lore and some of the narrative that you wanted to explore with this. What was something that the table brought to the story that maybe was like surprised you in the best way possible?
Definitely the like how tight knit their family was and how important mothers were to this family. Like we have a mother of adult children, we have an expectant mother, we have a mother of young children, and even in Erica's so stinking brilliant. Erica as Ava picking like an ancestral guardian, Barb. Even like the mothers that are just sort of like spirits and ideas now are a part of the cycle of like family here. Because like when you call in your ancestral guardians, you're calling in your mothers. Like it is about protection and what mothers owe their children and what they owe each other and what they owe themselves. Like all of that came out of like that character gen session, which then became me going like, well, that's integral to this table's inner party dynamic, which means it has to be integral to like the story of the world. And there's a lot of like things you can see within the story that looked through the lens of like motherhood, even down to like kind of funky, terrifying pregnancy allegories with the bear map of this thing that's inside you that is like that can only live by feeding off of you. Like I know that's a very like dark way to refer to pregnancy, but like I do have cousins that were like when I was calling and talking to them as I was like kind of breaking out the world, they were like, oh, I'm going to be really honest. Like I'm 7 months pregnant now. And like, I'm so excited to meet this kid. Like this child is the love of my life, but like, it does feel bad if I'm being honest that like, all I feel like the exchange that's happening right now is all the choices I make about like what I eat and what I do and when I rest and like what I do in the world is around what is best for this baby. And all I am getting back from this child is they're sitting on my bladder, so I pee every 12 seconds. My hair and my skin are different, and like my back hurts all the time, and like my feet hurt, and I can't like touch my toes, and like I have to be on bed rest 5 hours a day. Like, so there's a lot of that trade-off that is uncomfortable, that like you can find a lot of like those little things if you rewatch it with a lens of like an analysis of motherhood, and all of that was very much entrenched in everything that the players built.
Love that. And then what do you want the audience to take away from this as like kind of the core piece that you hope sticks with people?
I hope the thing that everyone walks away with is that like in that fiction, in that time when we were reading, like so much of the brutality of like teaching children the highs and lows of like what humanity is capable of was like obscured through the lens of xenofiction. Like if you show intergroup violent dynamics, but they're bunnies, we don't find that as like distasteful to show children as if there were people doing it in a story. We would say that maybe that's not age appropriate for a kid, but like, because we made the bunnies do it, we were able to see all of that. And in that transitional time where you go from like animal xenofiction to like 1984 and Animal Farm, where we're starting to talk about like important books and books and works and fiction that teaches children how the world works and how to think about it. Like, I guess if I wanted anyone to take something away from Burrow's End, I hope they saw this as a meditation on like what it means to be human, to decide what you want to be as an individual, as a family, as a society, and to choose. And yeah, I hope it's a little messy, and I hope that people can debate interactions in the world and like what NPCs were right and wrong, and like what player choices could have led down different paths. Like, I hope it opens conversation, because that's my favorite part of good books, is the ability to like discuss them. And I hope people can do that with this. I will find that so wonderful if they do.
I can tell you right now you succeeded, because the second you said that like the choice that Rashawn made of blowing up like the big bad in the final moments, I'm like, oh, but what if they didn't? Was Phoebe someone you could talk off the ledge? Because I didn't think so. Is that a thing? Is that possible? Like, immediately.
And the best part is that like I could tell you what I had in my notes as like resolution mechanics, but I think there is something more interesting that like you'll never know. Yeah. You'll never know what Phoebe was capable of. Maybe if you had stopped and taken your foot off of her throat for 1 second, she would have taken the advantage, won the fight, and doomed the world. You'll never know. You'll just know what has come out of the choice you made. And seeing those epilogues, how can you argue that this isn't the best of all possible worlds? And that's really fun to me.
I love it. Well, Burrow's End is just absolutely amazing. It is a masterclass in storytelling, and I love it. And I can't wait for everything else you do. And I just need to talk to you forever.
Thank you. I will talk to you forever about anything and never answer a question all the way for you.